everyone, Big Pauly back for a brand new video. For the month of January 2025, I'm going to be diving into the world of Alfred Hitchcock. Yes, with these three lovely box sets. There's around about 14 or 15 movies all in total. And out of everything that's on here, I've only actually seen one film, which is SkyQ. And yeah, so I thought I'll go through this lot, watch all these films through the whole month of January, and then I'll review them as I go, because I don't want to leave it to the end of the month because I've probably forgotten what's happened. So yes, we're going to kick it off. I'm going to kick it off with this box set, and I'm going to start with Rear Window, which I have never seen before. So let's start a month's viewing of the Alfred Hitchcock Classics collection. Let's do it.
We all enjoy, shall we say, putting our toe in the cold water of fear.
Okay, so first up is Rear Window from 1954. This stars James Stewart as L.B. Jeffries and also Grace Kelly as his girlfriend Lisa. Now, first of all, he's really nosy. I've seen some nosy neighbours, but this bloke is really nosy. Yeah, so what's the film about? Okay, so it's set in this like apartment complex. Kind of reminded me a little bit of M. Night Shyamalan's Lady in the Water, with all these different people in these little apartments. Maybe he got his influence from this film. Yeah, and James Stewart is a photographer that had a bit of an accident, and he's held up in this apartment with a cast on his leg, you know. He's had a bit of an accident and he's in a wheelchair. So he can't do much for himself. His girlfriend, Lisa, Grace Kelly, comes around every now and again. Plus, there's also a masseuse and all that kind of, and come to help him try to get through the month. It's going to take about 6 weeks before he can get the cast off and go back to normality. But while he's there, he's just sitting by the window. It looks like it's a really hot day, or a really hot couple of days, up in the 90s and the 100s. Everybody's got their windows open. Nobody's got air conditioning. And we just go from one window to another window to see all these different people's lives and their daily comings and goings and what happens. Now, what I really liked about this film is that even though we don't know too much about all of these other characters in all these other different little apartments, we get a kind of idea of their life just from certain scenes throughout the film. But there is one apartment that draws Jeffrey's attention, and it's a bloke and his wife, and certain things happen, and Jeffries believes that he's actually murdered his wife, and so it turns into a bit of an investigation, spying on him, even getting the binoculars and a camera with a telescopic lens about that long, just so that he can see an apartment and see what's going on. It's a really good setup, this nice little apartment block. It's all very Universal Studios backlot, but it looks really good, and sometimes as the camera pans across from one apartment to the other, we get a little glimpse of an alleyway and stuff that's happening outside of the alleyway, like a lot of kids playing in the street, or cars going past, or people walking past. So it gives it a bit of authenticity, that this is actually, you know, its own little apartment block, and life is carrying on outside of it. Now, I thought the performances were good, especially from James Stewart. I mean, he doesn't really have much to do. He's just sitting there in a wheelchair for most of the film. I think he probably only gets out of the wheelchair once in the entire film. But he kept me entertained, and so did Grace Kelly as well. Now, there's not much music in the film, apart from music that's coming from the actual apartments. There's an apartment where there's like piano and like an entire jazz quartet, and every now and again someone else puts on a record player. So there's not a lot of orchestral music. So that was very clever, just relying on local sounds around this apartment rather than having a full, 2-hour score for the film. My attention definitely didn't drift in this film though. I was watching everything he was watching. I was looking in all these apartments. I was looking outside of the apartments and see what was going on, see if I could spot something. And it got to like the last half an hour to 20 minutes and it started to pick up its pace, and it was a bit of a race against time to find out what was going on. And at one point I was like, get out of there. So yeah, I thought it was a really good film. Really good film. I believe Christopher Reeve actually did a remake back in the 80s, I believe. I'd never seen that version, so I might actually watch that version now. But for me, yes, for 1954, Alfred Hitchcock's classic Rear Window was a really good flipping film. For 2 hours, kept me engrossed for the entire film, didn't get bored. To show you how much I was engrossed in the film, it got to like an hour and 25 minutes and I had to go to the toilet. And so I paused it and I literally went in the bathroom next door and I almost ran back to the seat because I wanted to find out what was going to happen in the rest of the film. So there's not many films that do that actually. But yeah, I thought it was really good. 4K, of course, it's a 4K box set. The audio, I think, is mono, DTS mono, because I could only hear it coming through the main centre speaker. But of course, it's 1954, so you're not going to get Dolby Atmos, are you, really? The picture quality was pretty good. It was, obviously grain, but it was colour, and it was really good for a 70-year-old film. I haven't seen any of the extras, but there we go. So yeah, that is Rear Window, first film, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So oh my God, I got some more in it. I got Vertigo. That's supposed to be a classic as well. I know Psycho's brilliant, even though I've seen Psycho. I'm still going to watch it and I'm still going to review it for you because I've never talked about it in the past. And I'll finally get round to watching The Birds as well. But that's just that collection. Then we've got that collection with all of those in. And then we're going to finish it off with all of those as well. So absolutely fantastic. So if I was to give Rear Window a score, I'm actually going to give Rear Window 9 out of 10 Hitchcocks. It was that good. Yes. So 1 down. What a fantastic way to start a month's viewing of the Alfred Hitchcock collection. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll go on to the next film, which I presume is going to be Vertigo, as that's next on the list. But yeah, I look forward to watching that one. Okay, so on to Vertigo, and I'll share my thoughts after I've seen the film. Okay, so next up from 1958 is Vertigo, starring James Stewart. Now, he plays a character called Scotty, but his real name is John. Yes, and he is a retired detective, but he suffers from vertigo, or agoraphobia, or agoraphobia, if you're American. Now, Scotty is approached by a friend who wants him to put on his detective hat and follow this bloke's wife, Madeline, played by Kim Novak. He believes that she's been possessed by a dead person from the 1800s. So Scotty follows her around San Francisco. She goes to a few weird places. She goes to a cemetery and looks at a gravestone from some woman from the 1800s. She also likes to go to an art gallery as well and just stare at a photo, stare at, a painting on the wall. The funny thing is, though, she kind of does her hair the same way as the person in the painting, and she carries around the same type of flowers. So it's as if this person has been possessed by the person in the painting. gets a little bit weirder later on. As Scotty is getting a little bit closer to Madeline, unfortunately there's a tragic incident that happens, and Scotty was unable to prevent this tragedy from happening because of the vertigo that he suffers from. So, I think the film kind of like involves a bit of mental health there. Probably one of the first films to deal with mental health problems. And he's kind of like in a trance for like months, and has to go through some therapy to try and come out, the other side. Now, later in the film, Scotty comes across this woman called Judy, who kind of bears a striking resemblance to Madeline, and he kind of starts like a manipulation of trying to get her to look like Madeline. For me, it got a little bit confusing at the end of what was going on. It seemed like it was more control and manipulation. So I'm not quite sure on what the ending was trying to say, and what it was trying to do. But I thought it was okay. I thought it was a good film. It didn't have that final oomph for me, unfortunately. It was a little bit slow in the middle. It's still a good film, but it's not up there. I don't think it's not one of my favorites, so far. Even though it is, held as a classic, there was just a few things that I was a bit confused with. The last like 10 to 15 minutes got a bit confusing, and the middle part where there was some lovey-dovey action was kind of a bit slow for like 15 minutes or so. The film was over 2 hours long, so quite a long one there. But it looked gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Set in San Francisco in 1958. It looked like it could have been filmed yesterday. The 4K restoration on this was brilliant. Hardly any grain, a very minimal amount of grain, but all the colours were vibrant. There was a couple of scenes. There was a restaurant scene where the wallpaper was like bright pink, and then there was a flower shop with lots of all different coloured flowers, which really popped on the screen. The restoration on this was really, really good. Also, the audio, I listened to the DTS X audio, which was really good and had some good bass in it and some good use of the surrounds. So I'm glad I listened to that soundtrack rather than like a mono soundtrack. I do like my meaty soundtracks, especially when it comes to like surrounds and stuff like that. So so there we go. So that is Vertigo. It was a good film, but there was a couple of bits that I just didn't get or confused me. So maybe someone can stick down in the comments what the ending really meant, because I was like, is that it? I was expecting a bigger build-up or something. But anyway, that is Vertigo from 1958. If I was to rate this one, I would give this one 8 out of 10 Hitchcocks. Yes, there we go. So that is Vertigo from 1958. Okay, on to the next film. Okay, so every director has that one film that they're always identified for, and ends up going on to be a classic. In Alfred Hitchcock's case, Psycho from 1960, starring Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. This film is in black and white, and it's basically about this young woman, Marion, played by Janet Leigh. She gets in a relationship with this guy called Sam, and they're talking about getting married or running away. And Marion works in this like estate agent, and she gets the task of taking $40,000 to the bank to pay in for obviously a house. Unfortunately, she decides, I'm buggering off with it. So she gets on the road, takes the $40,000 with her, and she tries to remove any kind of trace of her, even as far as swapping her car for another car on the way. But on her way on the road, she gets into a storm, very rainy, and she finds Bates Motel. So she thinks, I know, I'll stay here for a night. That was a big mistake to start with. Yeah, Bates Motel is obviously run by Norman Bates. You've got like the 12 little chalet hotels, and then you've got the big house up on the hill, which I've actually seen the one in Disneyland, Florida, and also LA. So Norman runs the hotel, and every now and again we get a little glimpse of Norman's mum up in the windows. Unfortunately, about half hour into the film, poor Marion, played by Janet Leigh, ends up on the other end of a very sharp knife. Yes, we all know the famous shower scene with the old shower curtain. It's a really clever scene. It's brutal, but it doesn't show the brutality of it. You don't get cut marks and you don't get gouges in your stomach and stuff like that, or swiping across the face. You see the knife coming down. It doesn't really even hit the body, but you know what's going on, and you see the blood trickling down with the shower, the water from the shower. So it's a very brutal scene, but you don't see the brutality of it. It leaves it up to your imagination. Norman decides to dispose of the body and anything that's left over in the hotel room that could trace her back to the Bates Motel. So he gets everything, including the body, throw it in the back of a car and just throw it in a swamp, including the $40,000. And then you start to get people coming around asking what's going on and have you seen this woman. You get a private investigator. You get Marion's sister as well. Of course, Norman tries to throw people off the scent, just telling them what they need to know. And, she was there, yes, but then she drove on. And the same with the private investigator. But then Marion's sister and her boyfriend, Sam, decide to just go out to Mate's hotel, do a bit of investigating and see if they can actually, have a word with Mrs. Bates up there in the old hotel. That's all I'm going to say. That's basically all I'm going to say. That's the main plot of the story. It's a very clever film. It's got a lot of suspense. It's got a lot of intrigue. Janet Leigh was pretty good, although she only had about half an hour screen time. But of course, it's Norman's film. It's Anthony Perkins who shines in this film and brings across all his insecurities and his weirdness. And you've got to recognise that this was probably a massive influence for M. Night Shyamalan because of the mystery and also having a rather large twist on the film as well. Now, the 4K picture quality for the most part is okay. In certain scenes, there is a lot of heavy grain, which just blemishes any detail on things like clothes and faces. But for the most part of the film, it's okay. But I don't know if the 4K actually benefits the film. Now, I watched it with a DTS-X soundtrack, which was really good. Not a huge amount of surrounds, apart from when Marion was driving in the rain and standing outside Bates Motel in the rain, and it was just pouring down everywhere, all around me and above me. So that was quite impressive. But on the most part, the picture and the sound, I think it's probably the best that there is, but I thought it would be a bit better on the picture quality. But like I say, there's quite a heavy grain structure, at least for the first part of the film. So there we go. So that is Psycho from 1960. And if I'm going to rate this one, I'm going to give it the full works. Yeah, I'm going to give it 10 out of 10 Hitchcocks. This is Alfred Hitchcock's most famous piece. And it shows in the story, it shows in the acting, specifically from Anthony Perkins. and just the entire structure and mystery of the film. And it's one of the best so far. So there we go. That is Psycho. Okay, so next up from this collection is The Birds. Now, I don't associate Alfred Hitchcock with horror. It's more mystery, suspense, thriller. So for this one, it's a full-out monster horror film. Okay, so the film stars Tippi Hedren as Melanie Daniels. She's a bit of a socialite. She's wealthy. Well, her father's wealthy, runs a newspaper and that kind of thing. And she's in this small little town off the suburbs of San Francisco. And she's shopping for a couple of birds in a pet shop. When Rod Taylor comes in, who plays the character of Mitch. They have a bit of flirting. She decides to pursue him and follow him to his house. Now, the first 50 minutes of The Birds is hit or miss for me. It's a bit slow. I know it's building up the characters, introducing us to the location, but there are a few pacing issues, I think. It's when it gets to the 50 minutes, that's where everything starts getting good. All the interesting stuff comes in, and we start to get the birds and we start to get the attacks and things like that. So after that first 50 minutes, it turns into a full horror film. There's some great scenes later in the film involving a load of birds attacking school kids as they're running away from school. There's this one fantastic scene, absolutely brilliant scene, where Melanie is sitting outside the school, and every now and again you see over her shoulder a crow just flying, and another one flying, and landing on this kind of climbing frame thing. And then as she turns around, wham, it's just absolutely full of crows, and it gives you that shiver. There's other great scenes in the film as well, involving a petrol station and a massive explosion because of one silly sod with a cigarette, and the attack on the house at the end, and just when they open that door to finally leave the house, these birds are everywhere, and these birds have got all sorts of voices. Some of them sound like screaming cats, and then there's other ones where it's dead silent, no music, and you just get the odd really haunting chirp from a bird echoing behind. So I think the sound design and the squawking bird design, I think, was brilliant on this film. And also how they shot the film as well with the birds. Obviously, they're not going to use thousands and thousands of seagulls and crows and things like that. And if you look closely at some of the birds, especially the ones perched along the top of the house, you can see some of them don't move. So they've used a mixture of little statues and real birds mixed in with them. There is some really nice tension in the film and edgy the seat moments, especially when they're trying to walk through this minefield of birds. And what's funny is all of these birds everywhere, perched absolutely everywhere and all over the floor. Not once did I see a bit of bird poo come out of those birds' bums, or even just scattered all over the floor. It'd be like walking through glue. So The Birds is a really fun horror film, and it's responsible for giving us a lot of great horror films these days. I'm sure it was a big influence for a lot of directors. The only downside for me is the ending. It's just done. That's it. It's abrupt. Too abrupt. I know there's really not much you can do with the ending. How could you stretch it out? But it just ended. That's it. And that's the only disappointing thing on the film. I don't know how audiences back in the day in the cinema would have felt about that. It just ended too abruptly for me. I would like to have seen a bit more, but it is what it is. That's how they decided to do it, so you have to respect them for that. It just ended a little bit abrupt, but it was still a really good, thrilling film. A little bit slow at the beginning, like I say, for me, as we get to know the characters, and it's drawn out a little bit, but overall a really good horror thriller. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10 Hitchcocks. I might have given it 9, but there was no bird poo anywhere, so drop a point for that. So there we are, that is The Birds. Let's move on to the next film. Okay, yes, I've got my fleece on. It's turned flipping cold. Yes, we are now on to the second box set, which is the blue box. And I have just watched Saboteur from 1942. 1942, I tell ya. Flipping Nora. And this stars Robert Cummings as a character called Barry. And he works in this big factory building airplanes, obviously for the war. Unfortunately, there's a big fire that happens. And Barry gets blamed for the unfortunate death of his best friend by way of fire extinguisher that was full up with petrol for some reason. I don't know why. Yes, and he has to kind of like go on the run after the police chasing him. He goes across state. He's trying to find this person that handed him the fire extinguisher. So he's kind of like chasing him across the state. On his way, he bumps into various people, including a travelling circus with a lot of freaks, bearded woman and all that kind of stuff. And eventually he's confronted by some of the people that are involved in this sabotage. And it goes a lot deeper. It's kind of like this shady organisation that are intent on doing all this saboteur, and they even want to like blow up a boat, you know, blow up this big navy launch of this ship. It kind of feels a bit like the beginnings of Spectre from Bond. But as it goes on, he tries to foil the plot and prove his innocence. There's a big shootout near the end in a movie theatre, and also the film comes to its conclusion at the top of the Statue of Liberty. So yeah, 1942, obviously black and white, standard 4:3 picture and standard mono, so nothing spectacular. Very different from the usual stuff that I'm used to, but I thought it was a good story. I enjoyed the story, enjoyed the journey, the character who's trying to prove that his innocence, and everybody was out for him. I also enjoyed the characters that he met along the way, not only in the cabin with the blind man and his daughter, who eventually went on the journey with him, but also the travelling circus and all the different characters and the Siamese twins and the fat woman and the characters on that travelling circus. So yeah, I did enjoy it. Again, when it comes to films of this era, whether it be American or British, they do always tend to end very abruptly. You know, you've got the final scene and then that's it. The end. There's no stretching it out. It's just, this is the end of our story. We're done. So it's kind of weird getting used to expecting there to be a bit more on the end of the story, but it just comes to a conclusion. But I did enjoy it. Picture quality was perfectly fine. 1942, you know, you're not going to get digital picture restoration or anything like that, but there was some grain in it. But what can I say? It's a 1942 black and white film. So there we go. And I'm not moaning that it didn't have Dolby Atmos, because we just had a mono soundtrack. But yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give it 7 out of 10 Hitchcocks. It was just about an hour and 50 minutes, but I was invested in the story and the characters, and it was a good little film. So yeah, that's Saboteur from 1942. Okay, so next up from 1943, we have Shadow of a Doubt. Okay, so this film stars Joseph Cotton as Charlie and Teresa Wright as Charlie. Yes. So the film is about Joseph Cotton's character, Charlie, who decides to leave New York, go to California to visit his family. His sister there and her husband, and they've got 3 children as well. They've got an older daughter called Charlie as well, and you also have 2 small kids, and he basically goes to visit with them. The eldest daughter, Charlie, yes, I'm going to say Charlie a lot in this review, she's ecstatic he's coming to visit, and she always thought highly of her uncle, and they have a good connection and relationship. But the uncle is followed to California by 2 men, and they believe that Charlie is one of 2 men that are responsible for some murders. Yes, they believe that Charlie could be the Merry Widow murderer, the man that has killed 3 pretty well-off widows. But Charlie's niece, Charlie, starts to read things in the newspaper and hear things from these two men that have followed Charlie all the way from New York. Performances were pretty good. I actually thought this had quite a bit of humour in the film. Not only the niece's father has this interaction with this other bloke where they tried to plot how they would kill each other, but the youngest daughter of the family, Anne, has this big fascination with books. She loves to read books. She reads 2 books a week. And when she grows up, she wants to marry a librarian. So she would have an endless catalogue of books to read. And there is some humorous dialogue between her and her brother as well. Obviously, 1943, the film is in black and white, and it is also 4:3 as well, so square image. Yes, with lots of bars on the outside. But I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the interaction between all of the characters, the family, and also wondering whether or not this Charlie is this killer, and his relationship with his niece Charlie as well. It does get a little bit more sinister towards the end, and you can see that Uncle Charlie really doesn't care who comes face to face with him. As I say, it can get a little bit sinister at the end. But yeah, I really enjoyed the film. It was about an hour and 48 minutes, something like that. So yeah, just short of 2 hours. But yeah, I thought it was really good. So how am I going to rate Shadow of a Doubt? I'm actually going to give it 8.5 out of 10 Hitchcocks. It was a good, entertaining film. I liked the mystery and the whodunit. You know, was it this guy, or was it the other guy that's the police are chasing? And I liked all the interactions between all the different family members. So yeah, there we go. So that is Shadow of a Doubt. So if tomorrow is yesterday, then today's the day after. Yeah, no, I don't know either. Okay, next up, from 1955, The Trouble with Harry. Yes, I wasn't expecting this. This was a bit of an unusual one. It's like a murder mystery dark comedy. So it's set in this like little village with surrounding forests. You've got this man, Captain Wiles, who's out with his gun, his rifle, shooting rabbits, when he unfortunately stumbles on a dead body with what looks like a bullet hole in his head. So he's thinking, oh damn, I've shot someone. The funny thing is though, while this man is laying down in the middle of this forest, Harry is his name, there's people coming from all over the place. There's like a doctor that walks across, trips over him reading a book. There's a little kid that's out with his little plastic gun, and nobody is really bothered that he's dead. Some of the dialogue is a little bit weird. It's like, oh, it looks like he's dead. How unfortunate. and just carried on walking. Meanwhile, you've got Sam, played by John Forsyth, who was Charlie in the Charlie's Angels, the Cameron Diaz Charlie's Angels films. He's an artist, a struggling artist, although I don't quite get his art. I think I probably could have painted a lot better with a blindfold on. And he gets involved with Captain Wiles, and it's, who killed him? What happened? You've also got Shirley MacLaine playing Jennifer, who is the wife of the now deceased Harry. She had some interference with Harry earlier, and so did another woman as well. So it's a case of who really killed him? And the film is just this murder mystery with comedy thrown in. Now, Shirley MacLaine's character, Jennifer, has a young boy, and he's got his own weird little sense of humour. I mean, he's carrying this rabbit around, and he feels that he can get something better out of the deal with a dead rabbit. So he swaps the dead rabbit for a frog or a toad, but then takes the rabbit and swaps it for 2 blueberry muffins. And you can't make this up. Nobody actually cares in the village that this bloke is dead. It's all, oh, never mind, let's just bury him and get on with life. And that's what happens. Poor Harry is buried and dug up so many times in the film. Must have been actually quite an interesting script for this bloke. You're dead for the entire film. So yeah, this is probably the most unusual Hitchcock film that I've come across yet. And what with that dark kind of like twisted humour in there, it does make it a little bit more refreshing seeing something a little bit different. But I've got to say, the picture quality was really nice on this one. At the beginning of the film, it came up with this big like in spectral vision or something, and it was full screen. I think it was like 178 by 1 or something like that. And it was full coloured. It looked really nice. It was set in this forest, and you had all these different multicoloured leaves, browns and greens and pastel colours, and it looked really nice. They did a good job with the transfer on this one. It was a fun little humorous film, but like I say, it's not something that I actually expected. So yeah, there we go. That is The Trouble with Harry from 1955. If I was to rate this one, I'm going to give this one 7 out of 10 Hitchcocks. Yeah, it was humorous. I did like the characters. I loved the interaction with some of these characters and their kind of witty one-liners and unexpected dialogue that you got out of it. So yeah, there we go. That is The Trouble with Harry. Okay, so next up from 1964, we have Marnie, starring Tippi Hedren and Sean Connery as well. Yes, now this film came out, as I say, in 1964, the same year as Goldfinger. So whether or not this one came out before Goldfinger or after Goldfinger, I don't know. This film is a bit psychological. It deals with mental health. So, okay, so this film stars Tippi Hedren as Marnie. She's a thief, a liar, a con artist, and she doesn't like men touching her either. Yes. Now, she steals a load of money at the beginning of the film from this company, and she changes her appearance, she changes her identity. She also goes to see her dear old mum, who actually kind of reminded me of Forrest Gump. She sounded like Forrest Gump. Mama always told me life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Yes, and there's a bit of a strange relationship between her and her mum, and it's all to do with a traumatic event that happened when Marnie was a little girl. So after spending a crap ton of money that she stole, Marnie changes her hairstyle, buys a whole new load of clothes and goes for another job where she intends to steal another load of money. But then she crosses paths with Sean Connery's character, and who's this, he's kind of rich bloke. He owns this big like payroll type of company. He shines to her, but she doesn't feel the same way. She hates men. She can't stand men, and she can't stand men touching her either. And for some reason at that time, she keeps seeing red. Yes, I put a bit of red in front of her, you know, and she's going to go absolute bonkers. And it does revert back to the traumatic event when she was a little girl. Okay, so Sean Connery plays Mark Rutland, who owns this big company and has a lot of money. He decides to marry Marnie. They go off on a honeymoon. It doesn't exactly go to plan, but eventually he works out with a bit of investigating who she is and what she's done in the past. And he tries to bring the psychological side out. He tries to find out what this traumatic event is and tries to help her come to terms with this event without her going to prison for, you know, stealing a lot of money. Right, okay, so this was actually a longer film than usual. It was 2 hours and 10 minutes, 1964, and it was colour. I thought it was a good film. Tippi Hedren obviously was the best thing of the film. She just went sometimes from really just calm and just a normal woman to absolute bonkers, absolute crazy, and into these like violent fits. Sean Connery was a very calm, collected guy through the film, and helped her out a lot. And overall, I enjoyed the story on this one. There was a fair bit of grain. Sometimes it was a little bit heavy, especially at the beginning of the film, but most of the way through the film, it was not too bad. But I did notice there was kind of like a hazy effect, especially over the faces, you know, where they're trying to smooth out the faces. I think they used to do that in the old Hollywood films. Even Superman from 1978 had the same problem. It looked, there's bright around them and they just looked very hazy and waxy. But I think that's just how it looked back then. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was good. It had me attention all the way through the film, and it was interesting to find out what was going on with this woman and the traumatic events from her past and the connection with her mum and everything like that. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. I am going to give Marnie 7.5 out of 10 Hitchcocks. Fantastic. There we go. So that is Marnie. So we'll move on to the next one, which is a film called Family Plot. Okay, so next up from 1976 is Family Plot, which is actually Alfred Hitchcock's very final film. And this film is a bit of a con. It's a con all round, basically. You've got two couples who are performing cons. Okay, so on one side, you've got Bruce Dern and Barbara Harris, who plays a character called Blanche. She's a fake medium, and she holds this seance with this old lady who is trying to find the heir to the family millions. So Barbara Harris and Bruce Dern go out trying to search and trying to find this heir that will eventually net them $10,000. On the other side, you've got a couple of jewel thieves and kidnappers played by Karen Black and William Devane. Now, the thing is that William Devane's character is actually the long-lost heir that Blanche is trying to find. And eventually both these couples interact with each other. Now, I really enjoyed this one. This was a suspenseful thriller. There was a little bit of comedy in there every now and again. It also starred Ed Lauter, I think his name is. But it was a great little film about these two conning couples. Now, the film was actually 2 hours long. For me, the standout actors in this is definitely Bruce Dern and William Devane. They basically shone in this film and carried the whole film. But the other halves, Karen Black and Barbara Harris, were also really good, but just not as strong. The picture quality on this one was pretty good. There was a few scenes where the grain was quite heavy, but on the most part, yeah, there was a grain all the way through it, but vibrant colours and stuff like that. And yeah, it did look good. The audio was good as well. And this is, Alfred Hitchcock's final film. 1976. I believe he died 4 years later. So if you're going to go out on a good film, go out on a good film. And for me, family plot ticked every single mark. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. If I'm going to give this one, 8 out of 10 Hitchcocks. Okay, so that's the end of the second box set. We better move on to the third box set and make our way through that one. So yeah, let's watch the next film. Right, okay, next up, Rope. This is from the third box set. This is 1948 and stars James Stewart. And it's a very interesting film because it's all set in one location in this apartment in New York. And this film sets up the entire film in the first 3 minutes. There's these two guys, these two colleagues. You've got Brandon and you've got Philip. And they strangle this poor man, David, within the first 3 minutes and stuff him in a wooden chest. The rest of the film is all about a dinner party in that apartment, and everything is going on in this dinner party. Everyone's having fun while poor old David is dead, stuffed in this wooden chest. You've got David's girlfriend, David's dad. They all come. They're all wondering, where is David? You know, he should be at the party. Unbeknownst to them, poor old David is stuffed in a wooden chest. Now, these two colleagues, Brandon and Philip, Brandon is very sure of himself. He's very, murder is just something that happens. It's just something that more intelligent people do to get rid of less intelligent people. And he's perfectly happy with it. He goes along, it's the perfect murder. He's got away with it. Meanwhile, Philip is always on edge and he's always worried. He's thinking that they're going to get caught, and then it kind of dwells on him, they've murdered someone and they're going to get found out. But, it's up to Brandon to smooth it over and to persuade Philip that they've done the right thing. They are the superior male, and that poor old David deserved it because he was inferior. During this dinner party, there's also a pretty deep conversation that goes on with David's dad and a few others about murder and about what's acceptable in society, and should more intelligent people have dominance over the inferior people, and should inferior people be killed out to make way for more intelligent people. It's a deep conversation. So it is quite a dramatic, it's a dramatic piece. Of course, later on, James Stewart arrives. Don't exactly know what his job is. I think he's just a friend. And he starts to piece together certain things, and he's looking at people's reactions and the way they put themselves across, conversations that Brandon and Philip are having amongst themselves, the way that things have been moved around in the apartment. He becomes more sure that something nasty has happened to David, and he tries to put all the pieces together. And I love the last 5 minutes, the last 5 to 6 minutes of the film was kind of edge of the seat stuff. There was just no talking for the last 5 minutes. It was all about the sounds that were outside of the apartment. So yeah, really good. Really enjoyed it. It's an hour and 20 minutes, so not a very long film. And I don't think you could have stretched this out to 2 hours. It was the perfect running time. 1948, the picture was fantastic. It was 4:3, but it was crisp, very colourful, and it was a great transfer. The audio was good as well. I think the audio only came through the centre speaker though. So it must have been just mono, but it was really good anyway. Performances were brilliant. I think the guy who played Brandon, the one who was okay with the murder, he pulled it off brilliantly. There was not a single doubt with this person that he'd done anything wrong. Also, Philip was really good as he tried to struggle with, you know, have they done the right thing and are they going to get found out? James Stewart, he was really good as well, as kind of like the detective came in at the end to try and piece together all these, you know, all these pieces of what actually happened. So there we go. So that is Rope. Really enjoyed it. 1948, and great performances all round. And just one location, one single location, one apartment in New York. The only thing that kind of threw this off was the matte painting of the buildings out the window. The clouds never moved. Yes, they were in exactly the same place all the way through the film. So maybe it wasn't a very windy day that day. Okay, so that was Rope. I'm going to give this one 7 out of 10 Hitchcocks. Really enjoyed it. Didn't have a massive runtime, an hour and 20 minutes, but it told the story and it kept me entertained throughout the film and guessing as well. So yeah, there we go. Okay, so next up we have The Man Who Knew Too Much. 1956, I think, either 55 or 56, and it stars James Stewart and Doris Day as well. A couple of American holiday makers holidaying in Marrakesh in Morocco with their son. James Stewart plays a doctor, and his wife Doris Day is kind of like, she was a well-known singer that performed in, you know, various places, although she's retired now. Well, they witness a murder in Marrakesh. It's actually the bloke that was actually on the bus with them on the way to like the Marrakesh town square. And on his deathbed, he whispers to the doctor, James Stewart, about an international assassination that's going to be happening in London. But so they don't go blurting it out to every policeman in town, their son's actually kidnapped by a couple of people that they met at a dinner the night before. And it leads them to London, where they try to foil an assassination attempt and try and find their son as well from the kidnappers. So yeah, it was a good film. It was 2 hours long. It was presented in VistaVision, and it looked good. The colours were good and everything, and it was full screen. You know, full screen. Performances were good. James Stewart was good. Doris Day tried to do everything to enable her to actually have a bit of singing in the film. But it was an international assassination thriller. That's basically it. Yeah, so it was good. The colours were good. It was bright. The sound was good as well. They used, obviously, scenes in Morocco, in Marrakesh, for like towns locations. So it looked very authentic. The finale of the film was at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And yeah, they tried to foil the assassination plot there. Kind of ended up feeling a little bit of like a Bond film, but I thought it was good. It was a good espionage assassination thriller. Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was okay. I thought it was a pretty good film. How would I rate it? I'm going to rate this one 6.5 out of 10 Hitchcocks. It was a good film, but the whole Marrakesh thing, the whole Morocco and Marrakesh thing, I thought kind of took up a little bit too much time. And there was a lot of them not getting the help from local authorities when they got back, you know, when they got to London, and the police were kind of like, well, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this. So, yeah, so 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, that was The Man Who Knew Too Much. Okay, so next up from 1966 is Torn Curtain, starring Paul Newman and Julie Andrews. This is a bit of like an espionage thriller, a spy thriller. So this stars Paul Newman as Professor Michael Armstrong, who's a nuclear physicist. And because the American government has shut his work down, he decides to defect to East Germany to meet up with a German scientist over there so that he can help develop an anti-missile kind of system which will make all nuclear weapons void. His assistant, and fiancée Julie Andrews, who plays a character called Sarah, follows him on the plane to East Germany, where she gets roped into this espionage spy thriller. She doesn't know his real intentions and why he's defecting to Germany, but there is a little twist. He actually doesn't know as much as he does. And the whole idea of the story is for him to defect to East Germany, meet up with his scientist and get the mathematical formula and everything so that he can then defect back to the United States and then perfect this weapon to knock out all, nuclear weapons. I thought it was a good film. It was about 2 hours and 7 minutes, something like that. Paul Newman was really good, and so was Julie Andrews, and also like the other supporting cast as well, where there was all various sorts of supporting cast as the East German police were trying to catch up with him and arrest him when they discover that he's actually a double agent and he's actually trying to get back to America. But yeah, I thought it was really good. The colours on this were really nice, very vibrant. Grain, yes, there was grain throughout the film, but it still looked really good. The audio was good on this as well, and I just liked all of the surroundings. There was a trip to a farmhouse. There was a bit of a struggle in a farm there with a German security officer that had been trailing him. And then later on, there was an entertaining bus journey as well, which in a way was a little bit comical. But yeah, Torn Curtain, thought it was really good. 1966 espionage spy thriller. Yeah, what more could you want? Fantastic. So I'm going to give this one 7 out of 10 Hitchcocks. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the next film. Okay, next up from 1969 is Topaz. This was a bit of a tricky one, this one. First of all, I think it was a bit too long. It was 2 hours and 22 minutes. The story revolves around a high-ranking KGB officer and his family that defect from Russia to America through Denmark. So they're on vacation in Denmark and they meet up with some Americans and defect to America and start giving some secrets. Of course, the Russians are trying to stop them, but it also includes France. It also includes like the French embassy and people in the French embassy, and it all twists to Cuba as well. And it's about selling secrets, and it's tricky because it kind of was a bit dull, to be honest. It's not his best one, not by a long shot, and I found myself drifting a few times through the film. There was just too many interconnecting storylines and too many characters, and trying to keep up with all these characters, who was involved with the French, who was involved with Cuba, what the Americans are doing, and then there's a long gap where there's absolutely nothing happening with the Russian family that defected. They kind of like in it at the beginning, and then that's it. You don't really get to see any more of them, so you don't get to find out what happens. And it's just, I gotta say, I wasn't happy with it. It was definitely too long. And I just didn't click. It just didn't click. The story just didn't click with me. I do like a nice spy espionage thriller, but this one was kind of like so drawn out at 2 hours and 22 minutes with so many interconnecting stories of different people doing different things in different countries, and the characters, and losing track of what character is working for what side and who's getting involved with who. Yeah, it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. But there you go. I mean, you know, you win some, you lose some. Yeah, very disappointed because throughout the entire run of these movies, these reviews, I've pretty much enjoyed every single film to a certain extent. You know, some were stronger than others, but none of them kind of made me bored. None of them made me struggle with them. But yeah, this one just didn't do it, unfortunately. Yeah. On the plus side, the pitch quality was fantastic. And I didn't really care about any of the characters. I didn't have a connection with any of the characters whatsoever. I can't even name you any of the actors that were in it because, you know, you haven't got your Cary Grants or who else has been in a lot of them. Julie Andrews and James Stewart and all that lot, and yeah, Paul Newman, and you know, big Hollywood names. I don't know anybody that was in this. I mean, I think I've heard of John Forsyth. He was in this, but it just didn't do it. It just didn't do it for me, unfortunately. Yeah, so that was Topaz. I'm gonna have to give this one a lower rating because it just didn't work. Not for me anyway. I don't want to insult it. I don't want to insult such a classic filmmaker. Because there's a lot of production value in it and a lot of locations, and yeah, it was to an extent it was really well shot. So I'm just going to go halfway. I'm going to go 5 out of 10 Hitchcocks. I think that's fair. It keeps me in the middle, so it's not as good as the others, but it's not as bad as it could be. So I'm going to keep it in the middle. Yeah, so that's Topaz. So we have one more film left. We have Frenzy. So we better get on to that one. And I hope that one kind of redeems my low point in the Alfred Hitchcock Classics collection. So let's do Frenzy. Okay, so the final film in the Alfred Hitchcock Classics collection, Frenzy. This was a very different Hitchcock film. It kind of took me by surprise, really. It stars John Finch as Richard Blaney. Now, he's just lost his job. He's milling about town in London. It's all kind of like set around Covent Garden and parts of London like that. And he is mistaken for the necktie murderer. Yes, that is a real thing. At the beginning of the film, it starts off on the banks of the River Thames where they're having this gathering, like officials and mayors and stuff like that, to do a speech. And all of a sudden, someone shouts out, "What's that?" And as the camera pans round, it's a full-size woman doing a spread eagle, absolutely stark bollock naked, with her rosy cheeks sticking out of the water. You can't miss her. And the first thing someone says, "Is she wearing a necktie?" Yes, so this starts off a series of necktie murders. And unfortunately, because Richard has connections with these various women or is seen with them, the police put 2 and 2 together and assume that it's him. There is another party involved and it's made clear who the actual necktie murderer is. This is it's a darker film, a lot darker film, but it's also kind of I wouldn't say a comedy, it's comical. There are certain things in this film that made me laugh. For instance, that bit at the beginning, you know, yes, there's a giant full-size woman floating naked in the Thames, but all you're worried about is the tie around her neck. I mean, for comedy, there is this inspector that's investigating these murders and going after Richard. And his wife has decided to start cooking him some weird food, you know, all a la carte and European stuff. And she keeps putting it on the plate and it's all weird looking crap. And he's like, oh, you could tell that he doesn't want to eat it and that he just wants a fry up and a roast dinner. And the stuff that she keeps coming out with is so comical. There's also a funny scene in the back of a lorry that's transporting a load of potatoes, plus also a naked woman that's in a bag. And when the murderer realizes that he's lost something and it must be with her, so he needs to retrieve it, otherwise it might point in his direction, he goes after this lorry, and he's stuck in the back of the lorry and trying to get this item from this naked woman that's in a potato sack, and her legs are just slapping all around him as the lorry's going up and down. But I think the scene that kind of like made me go, what? It was these two police officers in the pub when they were first talking about the necktie murderer. And someone from behind the bar said, apparently he rapes them first. And the cops just went, well, there's a silver lining at the end of that. And I was like, what? Did I just hear that? So yes, the film deals with raping women, murdering them, strangling them, but with a comedy side to it. Talking of the raping and murdering... Yeah, okay. There is a scene where this strangle takes this woman to his place, and she starts to get a bit uncomfortable, and he's going full on with his hands everywhere, and you can see she's trying to get away, and then he strangles her, and it's a very uncomfortable scene to see, but it's brutal, but you don't see the full brutality of it. And it's, you know, there's no music accompanying it. And at the end, when the camera pans up, all you see on her face is this. Which kind of threw me out of the scene a bit. Yeah. So as the subject matter of an Alfred Hitchcock film about raping women and murdering them, it was actually a pretty good film. Like I say, it was all set, and I think it was all filmed in London around Covent Garden area. So it was a proper kind of like Guy Ritchie-esque kind of early gangster, not a gangster film, but a serial killer film. You know, set back in the early 70s. This is from 1972. I thought the performances were really good, especially from the lead guy who played Richard. We also have Bernard Cribbins in it as well, who plays a landlord of a local pub. And there's a nifty little bit of camera action as well when this necktie murderer takes someone else up to his room, and you know what she's gonna get, you know what's gonna happen to her, and the camera is like outside his door, and it just, without any music, the camera just comes down and it backs up down the stairs across the street with everything is happening, cars going in front of her, and it just backs away from the room right across the other side of the road. And it's quite an impressive little shot there, you know, because it was very simple, but you knew what was going on, and it was just backing away across the street. So yeah, so there we go. So that is Frenzy, a very different Alfred Hitchcock film, totally different from anything that he's got, you know, from what I've seen out of these three boxes. But it was a good film with good performances, and okay, the subject matter's a bit iffy, but it was well done. It was very well done, very well directed, and it was really well written as well. And it had a good ending as well. So there we go. So that is Frenzy from 1972. I'm actually going to give Frenzy, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 Hitchcocks, because it was a 2-hour film. There was no slow moments. I was engaged with the characters, and the scenery, the London scenery, and it was just a really well told story. Yeah, so there we go. So that's Frenzy. Okay, so that is it. That is it. All 3 box sets are done. 14 films, 14 reviews. I hope you enjoyed them. Mostly all really good films. There's some classics in there. There was a low point or two, but I really had fun with watching all of these films, everything on here. Okay, so there are a couple of Hitchcock films that are considered classics that I actually haven't watched while watching this collection, including North by Northwest and the 39 Steps. So I will be watching those at some point later on, but they didn't actually form part of the Alfred Hitchcock Classics collection. So it was just basically these box sets that I wanted to get through and to review these films. So there we go. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It did take a little bit longer than usual. I did say I was going to do it in a month. We're kind of like almost over 2 weeks into February now, so it's taken a good 6 weeks. But unfortunately, when things get in the way and you don't always have time to watch everything, it does take a little bit longer. So there we go. So hope you enjoyed the video anyway. If you did, like it by giving it some thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, comment and share. Stick down below what are your favourite Hitchcock films, and other than the 39 Steps and North by Northwest, are there any other Hitchcock classics that weren't part of this box, these 3 box sets, that maybe I should look up? Yeah, so there we go. So hope you enjoyed the video. Till the next one, bye bye.